Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
Hey, what's up, guys? John here. Really excited to have Peter Siegel on the show today. We're going to be talking about multifamily, retail, real estate, the changing economy, and some big opportunities that he sees coming down the road. And it's going to be a great show. Hey, Peter.
John, how are you, man?
I'm doing really good. So you're based out of New Jersey.
I'm based in New Jersey. I triangulate, though. It's like central to my region is like Philly to New York to New Jersey. I'm always driving somewhere.
Cool. So do you invest also in Philly?
I don't invest in Philly. I don't love Philly for Philly is the first thing I look at is political landscape. Is the town open for business? Is it favorable for real estate and property owners? Philly's not really high up on the list, as you can imagine.
Yeah, I just went through a fair share of problems in LA. And I think that's one of the really big questions people have to ask before they make any investment is just what you said, like making sure that you're going to be putting your money in an environment that wants you to do well.
Man,
like Philly, New York, LA, it's an uphill battle. It's
uphill. And it's a scary time because we've all seen over the past couple of years, all states have been considering or adopting new forms of legislations and curbs on businesses, especially property owners with multifamily. I heard even Florida in Dade County is considering something in terms of regulation.
Yeah, you heard correctly. Dade County, Miami, and Tampa, they're considering, I think they declared like a housing emergency.
Yeah.
In Tampa, it's not like full rent control, but they are beginning to move in that direction. And as we know, as they open the door only continues to open. And so it will be interesting to kind of see as this affordability crisis gets worse, there's going to be more people demanding, quote unquote control.
You know what's interesting to me? When the price of gas gets too high and people don't like it and they complain that gas prices are too high and it's killing them and it's an extra tax and they can't afford to drive to see grandma. When that happens, what's the solution? We introduce more supply of oil into the marketplace. Gas prices come down, right? What's the problem with we have a housing shortage and prices are high for housing. We need to introduce more supply into the marketplace. But you've got these places, we're just talking about two places in Florida, and we know the coastal cities are pretty rough and Chicago's pretty rough, but their first knee-jerk reaction is to regulate, restrict, and they make it worse. I wish there was some way to get that message across. Like it's like you're playing with Mother Nature.
So I had a conversation many times before with people that would comment on Instagram. They would I would buy a property and fix it up, or I would do something, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're increasing the rent, and it's going to be more expensive." But the reality is that you need more supply, not less of it. If you have rent control in LA and you're essentially telling tenants, hey, your rent's only going to go up by 3% or 4% or 5%, but median rent's going up by 10 or 12%, what's going to happen is you're going to have this big gap, this discrepancy over 5 or 8 or 10 years. And these people are not going to ever want to move. And the only available unit will be the brand new construction with all the amenities at $3,500 to $3,800 a month.
Right.
And then they become the most expensive places. Look at LA and New York. They have the worst rent regulation, but yet they're the most expensive and least affordable.
Yep. If New York deregulated all 1 million of its current regulated apartment inventory, rents would plummet. Rents would plummet because there would be all this new inventory on the market. It couldn't absorb. The absorption would be a decade, until it stabilized, and rent pressure would go downwards.
Oh, definitely. And I had a tenant in LA a little while ago completely destroy a unit, like $40,000 in damage.
That's nice.
And I called my attorney, hey, should I pursue it? And he's like, you're going to throw good money after bad. Maybe you get a judgment. They're going to go to court in downtown LA courthouse. Good luck. That's not on your side. And if they don't have the money, the judgment's only as good as your ability to collect on it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I just had to eat the 40 grand. And it's like, if that were to happen in Florida 2 years ago, the tenant would have been in trouble.
Yeah. In Texas, they'd be in trouble too.
Yeah.
A lot of
But
these other states are a little bit more fair and balanced.
So what do you see as like now considering that like changing landscape, Peter? What do you think will happen over the next year or two, and where do you see the opportunity?
Yeah, more regulations are coming. That's the first thing I see. I remember speaking to my guy George here about it several years ago. I see waves of places where I never thought I'd see it start to talk about, and we discussed Tampa and Miami. I never thought I'd hear about that in Florida. But I'm seeing waves and waves of places and towns, municipalities, states talk about regulating the housing supply. So that's a rough pill to swallow. I feel our world is getting more divisive, more combative, more restrictive. There's going to be less dialogue, less discussion. It's, oh, you don't think like me, therefore you're the bad person, and I'll cancel you, or I won't support you, or we can't even have an adult conversation about it. I mean, I see this getting worse and worse and worse, and it bums me out. I think anybody who's been in business for more than 5 seconds knows that communication is so important. And there's less and less communicating going on, and just everything's so divisive, and it's rough to be heard or to ask to be heard. And even the mere implication of saying something that someone else may disagree with just makes things very controversial, and it's I worry about that.
So are you kind of maybe looking at other investing vehicles because of that?
So a few things have happened for me over the past few years as I've seen this materialize. Number one, you asked me before we started today how much that I do is multifamily versus other things. I answered you about 80% is multifamily. The other 20% is opportunistic, other investments, other businesses. I became an owner of a plumbing company this year. I started investing in Texas several years ago. So now I'm building 343 units, 232 units in Saginaw, which is Dallas-Fort Worth, and I'm building 383 in Austin and another 750 in Pflugerville, just outside of Austin. I'm an investor with someone else's projects in Dallas, in Princeton, Texas. So I've started to allocate capital to operators and builders and sponsors who I thought were great to partner with or to invest with as a hedge, but also because I had capital to deploy and I didn't have anywhere to deploy it in my core markets. So I had to look elsewhere, to your question. I've started investing in Texas. I've started investing. I was already invested in Florida. I've started investing a little more in Florida. I mentioned to you about the plumbing company. And look, I think the trades is where the money is for the long term. Talk about a recession-proof business or a stable business or a growing marketplace. These trades are the people that work in them currently are all aging out. They're all in their late 40s and 50s. No young people are coming into the industry. So there's going to be a real shortage of technicians and tradespeople. And so I felt like that was worthy of a look and an investment for me. And I got very active in the cannabis space a few years ago because I feel like that is one of the very few needle-moving industries that's going to really change economies. And look, all these states and towns, they need money. No one has any money. Our taxes keep going up because they don't have money. The consumer doesn't have any more money to pay higher taxes, yet they still have to pay the higher taxes. So along comes cannabis, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue that was never before there yesterday, but it's there now. It's a lot of money. It's real impactful amounts of money that these governments and states and cities can use to solve a lot of problems and fund a lot of things. So I felt like that was a space that I should get into, and I own some cannabis-related properties. I own a dispensary. I own the largest outdoor grow pot farm in California. It's a bumpy road, but it's one I'm holding on for the long term. So as an example, there, I've had to pivot a little bit. The multifamily pipeline is, it's not the time to invest in multifamily right now. But talk to me again in a year or two, whatever the case may be. But I think the future will be a little better. But the past few years have been tough for multifamily because the cat got out of the bag and everybody saw that multifamily was stable and great and you could raise rents. And so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, the cannabis space is funny because a few years ago, it was kind of like a dirty industry, and it became cool and adopted, and people are kind of really getting open to it, and the potential is there.
They are getting open to it. It's amazing it took so long, and I'm glad to see them getting open to it. Going back, just the money alone, just the economics of it are just, it's life-changing for these towns and counties. And oh my God, it's so much money. It's so much money.
Like I mean, one of my childhood friends works at. They have like I think 4 facilities in just outside of LA, and they're now building out one in Vegas. And,
Yeah.
like they're crushing it. And you know, given like how many employees they have, it's like relatively small, but they're really doing well.
I think online gambling is another one. I think that's going to be a lot of money. I think it's going to be heavily taxed. People are going to flock to it. You know, people like to play sports bets and gamble and whatever. But I think it's a big needle mover for our country. And as these states bring it on, it's going to be a lot of money.
What do you think about mom and pop hotel conversions?
Mom and pop. So are you referring to the use of the word mom and pop meaning small hotel conversions or like a 10 or 20 units doors or something like that?
More like the 30 to 50 that have been in the family for 30 or 40 years that, you know, their income was depressed over the last couple of years. And now, you know, obviously rates are going up. It might be a little bit more challenging for them to refi. Do you think we're going to see a lot of, you know, investors going out there picking up those properties?
I think that's a great. I never once before thought about that until you just mentioned it now. But sure, that's a value add play. That's a classic multifamily, but a hotel, but a value add play. If you're going to buy something that's a legacy asset that's long term owner managed, and they've not really kept up with design and amenities and things like that, it's ripe for someone to come in and give it a makeover, charge more money. I like that.
I think it's going to be interesting to watch like how retail as a whole will change over the coming 5 years. Like a lot of these strip centers will get they'll get converted into whether it be storage units.
Oh, I don't like the strip center business, John.
Yeah, me neither. I don't like it. But I think that people are going to jump in and buy it and be like, you know what, I can turn the asset from producing X to producing Y. You know, the structure's here. We can do it. Like,
well, they'll get cheap enough that it'll attract people. But if you're going to buy a strip center with the goal of tenanting it with like local businesses or regional businesses, I think that's tough. No one has any money.
Like I'm in an office right now, like a block from the beach, and there's maybe 30. It's a small building, maybe 30 doors here. 3, maybe 4 are rented. Everything is vacant. Yeah. I'm just like, I feel like I have the whole building to myself. Yeah, like I never ever see anyone. Yeah,
when you own a little strip center, your choice of tenant pool is like local businesses and at best regional businesses. You're never going to get a credit rated national tenant. And maybe you have like an anchor, maybe you have like a Dunkin' Donuts or something, and then like 1,000 square foot, 1,000 square foot, 1,000 square, you know, like little spaces chopped up next to the Dunkin' Donuts or something. But other than the Dunkin', you're getting like a shoe repair person, a nail salon, hair salon.
For $800 a month.
Yeah, and they don't have any money. They can't build out a space. They can't give you a real security deposit. They need the money to run their business, understandably. So I don't love strip malls for that reason.
Let me ask you this question, Peter. So an area, you know, we talked about Florida, like up and down the coast, people are jumping in, like you mentioned, because rents are going through the roof. You know, debt was cheap. You know, everyone wanted to be here. But what do you think that landscape will look like as we kind of step more into like an affordability crisis where rents maybe start to drop? And during that, maybe people leave those A-class apartments and go to like something that they can afford. Vacancies will increase, rents will potentially fall, and then the cost of borrowed debt will likely only continue to rise. Those owners that bought them at like a 3 cap, do you think we're going to start to see a lot of people trading those properties at, you know, a very attractive rate in the coming 24 months?
I don't know how I don't know how attractive a rate they will trade at, but I think a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money. If you bought Class A new construction product for a 3 and change cap, and a lot of people did, you better be able to hold on. Like you better have a lot of money on the sidelines and partners who don't care that you're carrying the negative cash flow with reserves, because at some point you got to pay the piper. I mean, where do you go with an acquisition that you took on for a 3.5 or 3.25 cap? You put 2.8, 2.85, 2.95% money on it. You know, where's your spread? The only thing that can save you is massively rising rents, but we're at the end of that cycle. You know, we're at the end. So if you bought in 2021 or the beginning of 2022 for these crazy numbers like we're talking about, at some point, if you didn't get rents up 30, 50% in like 18 months, you know, and I understand that there's probably some places in Florida and elsewhere that try to, or maybe even did. But at some point, you got to pay the piper, because you have to replace your cheap debt with a more expensive debt. It's typically 5 years, Maybe you got a 7 or a 10 IO deal, but the 10-year IOs that you're talking Fannie and Freddie, those aren't regional banks doing that. So Fannie, Freddie shut off the faucets. There's going to be a lack of money supply that's going to be available to these people to replace the cheap debt. I think it's going to be an issue, so they better have reserves.
Yeah, so I think that we're stepping into like a huge opportunity over the next like 48 months to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
And so like what I'm looking at is like, where is that opportunity going to be? Like what unique little caveats in the real estate market, or potentially even in tourism, like I mentioned, like hotels, that could be ripe for the picking.
I like the hotel idea. The thing about Florida, it's always saved. Like Florida is saved by the fact that it's a no-income tax state and it's warm weather and there's a constant river of demand of people. There's people always moving to Florida. Like I remember Florida every cycle. My parents are from Florida. I lived a lot of my life back and forth in Florida. And so my familiarity with it causes me to remember that in these cycles, Florida would move with the cycles, but it always came back. There was always people moving down. There was always new economies, new towns expanding, building, developing. Everything was pushing north. I remember when Boca, are you in Boca? You're in Boca. I remember when Boca was all groves. I mean, there was nothing there. Just north of there, you got to like Lake Worth. Lake Worth was a little seedy. Yeah. It was like the seedier part. And Lake Worth is even coming up a little bit. Then you get to Palm Beach, and it stopped at Palm Beach. Then it got to Jupiter. It kept pushing north. Hobe Sound. I remember 20 years ago, Hobe Sound was the new place people were pushing to, north of Jupiter. And it just keeps pushing north. I think Florida has that going for it. Like every year, whatever the number is, tens, hundreds of thousands, whatever of people, new people move to Florida. They just go north. They go north. They can't afford Palm Beach. Can't afford Miami. So regular people, retirees, whatever, they're going north.
Yeah, I think Florida is definitely, it's went through a very big change the last couple of years, and the affordability is going to continue to do what you just said. Like push everybody north. You're going to start seeing people, there's 1.6 million people, just vacant homes that people have in Florida that I think could potentially trade hands soon, or maybe just sit vacant still.
Run that by me again.
1.6 million homes are vacant in Florida, so about 18% of about 18% of all home inventory is vacant in Florida.
So does that mean there is second or third home and just no one's there, or like no one's ever been there?
Like retirees have like a home. They live in Connecticut. They live in Dallas.
1.6 million is a lot.
It's a huge number.
That's
right.
A big
and
number.
So it'll be interesting. Like I do think that we're going to start to see people, like if we step into a recession, those people could, especially if they're a 401k or retirement, maybe went through some changes the last year or two. Maybe like, we're not as secure as we thought we were. Maybe we'll sell the home over in Connecticut and we'll go to Florida,
right.
Or they'll sell Florida and go back. Like, I think Florida is a huge opportunity soon. Like, I think there's going to be big opportunities here very, very soon.
Yeah, I agree. I think Florida is going to be a big one because that's where there was a lot of action. Texas, there's a lot of businesses. In multifamily, we have the phrase follow the jobs, right? So if you follow the jobs, you end up in Texas, you end up in South Florida. Texas has a lot of companies, you've read about all of them this year, moving down there, and they're bringing thousands and tens of thousands of jobs with them. I mean, there's
high-paying jobs.
High-paying jobs. That's going to save Texas from the correction that everyone else is going to experience. But where you don't want to be investing is one of these places where there is no savior. So Florida has a savior, people always moving there. Texas has a savior, the companies are relocating every day. But you get to like New Jersey or New York or Illinois, anywhere else pretty much, there's nothing saving it. So they're going to have a higher beta when the market corrects, whereas Florida, Texas, and some of these other red states are going to have less of a beta and less volatility. But the other one's going to be super volatile, man. I wouldn't put money in a lot of these places.
So speaking of New Jersey, do you think that tenant regulations are going to get much more strict over the coming couple of years?
Yes.
That state seemed like it went through like a very radical move over the last 5 years.
I do think it's going to get worse. And it's a shame because it's not the solution. All we got to do is relieve the restrictive zoning ordinances and build more. You've got NIMBYism at its finest in New Jersey. People want to build new housing, just not near them, and do it down there or over there. And it's the zoning never gets passed. They don't amend any of the zoning laws. They've got affordable housing ordinances that don't create any affordable housing. They just de-incentivize builders from taking risk to build product. It's a very divisive state as it is. I mean, our great state of New Jersey, there's 535 different towns. No one talks to each other. They're all out for their own. And it's so grossly inefficient. So yeah, in that, against the backdrop of all these things I just mentioned, I think New Jersey's in for a rough ride. I do. Yeah. More restrictions, more regulations. I want to see them build more. I mean, how do we get these places to build more? They're so afraid to incentivize developers and entrepreneurs. They think it's like a dirty word. Like if you say, "Oh, I'm a real estate or a developer or owner or entrepreneur," it's like now you get looked at like, "Oh, you're the problem. You're the greedy guy." And they don't want to do that. They don't want to make it easier. Look, the government needs entrepreneurs and developers. They can't build housing, but what they can do is set policy that allows housing to proliferate and grow and develop. And they're failing to do that. They're trying. Some places they're trying. Look at St. Paul, who last year enacted the most restrictive rent regulations the world has ever seen.
In Minnesota.
Yeah. They're rolling it back now. They said, "Oh, that was a mistake," and they're rolling that back. You see California with ADUs now. I applaud them. They should have done it 30 years ago, but I applaud them for like trying to make a dent. You've got cities and states now that are buying their own property, like buildings, trying to create some affordable housing. I've seen some examples of that. New York's trying to do that with some long-time vacant buildings, but they're doing it's not going to move the needle. New York's doing it with like a 10-unit building and a 18-unit building. They're not going to create enough affordable housing product to make a difference. We got to build thousands and hundreds of thousands of units in like every state. I don't know what you feel, but I think we are short somewhere between, well, the government will say like 4 or 5 million housing units short in our country. I think it's more like 9 to 12 million short. I don't think it's 4 to 5 million short. I mean, that's a big number right there, but I think it's more like 9 to 12. So it's a lot of stuff we got to build.
I think that there's going to be some curveballs thrown at housing that I think a lot of people aren't anticipating. The first is like if you look at what's going on in Brussels and New York and LA and a lot of cities, is that they're saying, in office buildings, they have a higher vacancy rate. People are working from home. They're now trying to like move into a conversion to turn those into apartments.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to happen like in great scale in a year or two, but maybe in 5 or 10, if it starts to like pick up momentum, I think that could definitely open new inventory. But what people I think don't realize with real estate, they think that it's the developer that makes all the money and it's the investor that makes all the money. The reality is the city and the state, they make all the money.
They make all the money.
Because if they buy the building, let's just say, for example, a developer buys a building and they buy a 100-unit building and it's $500 a month, hypothetically for easy math. And then the developer goes there, fixes up everything, increases the rent to $1,000. The property taxes double on that building. The schools benefit. Police, they're able to hire more teachers. Are hiring more. Textbooks are updated. The streets are safer. Everything is better inside of that community. Sure, rent went up a little bit, but now the community is thriving more and more and more. But the more you build and the more value you can create for your community, I feel like real estate developers and investors are creating more value or as much value as some of the doctors. And
they are, and taking huge amounts of risk to do it. I mean, they have to sign personally on the dotted line to borrow construction money. I mean, that's a personal guarantee. Not everybody's got the stomach to do that. So that's why I say that the government needs the entrepreneurs and developers to solve a lot of these problems. So they have to start looking at ways to make it easier for the entrepreneurs to come in and take risk and spend money and invest money.
Let me ask you, Peter, for the new entrepreneurs, the people that, maybe they don't have the experience. They're maybe where you were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. What advice would you give them based on what you know now?
Develop a great sense of communication skills. Be tenacious. Be patient. Pick a great sector. For example, you offered up small hotels, boutique mom and pop hotels. I love that idea. If someone's watching this, go out and see if you can scoop up boutique mom and pop hotels, 50, 80 units, whatever the size is that you were inferring, and get to work on it. One at a time, develop your skills, become an expert. You got to be an expert in a lot of different things. Like you can't just be narrowly focused. I think today you have to be a Swiss Army knife. And don't be afraid to put in the work. John, I see a lot of young people a little work averse. I don't know how old you are. I'm 54. And I generally feel that young people today are looking for shortcuts or faster ways, and I don't know about shortcuts or faster ways. So maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, but I think you gotta pound away over the long term in a space that you feel great about, that you're developing some real expertise in. At some point, you're going to have your day. What I don't love to see is people picking one thing, they move to another, and then they move to another, and then after 15 years of being out in the workforce, they haven't really accomplished much of anything. Maybe they've got a little bit diverse skill set at that point, but I think you got to pick a lane, become an expert, then get in another lane, become an expert, get in another lane, become an expert. That's how I see it.
Yeah. It's interesting you said that. Like, a couple things that you said there. The first is that people are a little bit lazier. Like, I was hiring someone today to onboard to like go through my emails and like kind of make things a little bit easier for an assistant that I have. And it was a no-show. He texted me like 9 minutes after he was supposed to be there, like, "Oh, I'm sick."
That's great.
It's interesting because it's more and more of that. But I think what will happen is as the economy does change, that freedom of being sick is going to go away, and people are going to be more desperate. Unless that that money, government money, turns back on, people might be more desperate and actually start showing up again. But like when you mentioned, getting rich, people want to get rich quick. Get rich quick is like 10 or 15 years, of grinding, being around the right people, learning.
It's overnight, 10 or 15 years. That was pretty quick. Look, I want young people to find something that they love to do and get really good at and make a lot of money. I want everybody to do that. But, we just got to retrain or I don't know. I don't know how to talk. I feel at some point, I talk to a lot of young people, so I feel like I have a great perspective on one hand, and then on the other hand, I feel like, oh my God, I don't understand them. They don't understand me.
Yeah, a lot of people also talk about raising money. And I think a lot of people, from what I've gathered, they say that the easiest part is actually raising the money. The hardest part is finding the deal. And so when people are like experienced in the field, for example, for you in New Jersey, you may have connections in Texas. You might come across an opportunity that maybe you can't take on at that moment, but somebody that would be interested.
Yeah.
If your former relationship could bridge that connection, it's just like about those connections and building out that track record.
Absolutely. Be reliable, be trustworthy, build relationships based on those characteristics. People will take your call. People want to do business with you. You don't have to be, you bring up a good point. You don't have to be the Sam Zell of whatever the deal is. Like, you can participate in a whole host of ways. You can tag along and let someone else take it over. You can sell it. You can raise the capital for it and be the sponsor, the general partner. You can, lots of different ways to piece yourself in. And when you're first starting out, you have to find out what those ways are and get yourself involved. I think the great thing about being in the entrepreneurial space is that you're not limited to how many projects, deals, or opportunities you can be involved in. You can be involved in as many as you can reasonably procure and take on. And that's the exciting part for me.
Yeah, it's fascinating the way that the world's changing right now. Like, another thing that's also exciting with like the new entrepreneur that's going through that change, that's doing things the right way and building up the right relationships, is like if you're in a career right now, like let's say, for example, you're a roofer, or you mentioned the trades, plumbing, right? Maybe you work for a plumber and you worked for that plumber for 20 years and you learned a lot, or maybe even a year or two, but you learned a lot. And you want to, you have big ambitions, big goals, but you don't know how to achieve them. With YouTube and social media, you literally could just write out a list of like 100 evergreen videos to answer questions for people that have questions around plumbing.
Yeah. Post
those videos, then have some type of call to action at the end. Start interviewing other people. Like, for example, me and you are talking right now. You're an expert in real estate. So if I were to do that across 100 different people, and you're now building out all these new relationships with all different people across the real estate industry, you start to build authority. And now with social media, like, anyone can build authority as long as they have a thirst for knowledge and they're willing to put in the work. And
it's amazing. People ask me all the time, Peter, why are you on social media? Like, what are you doing? You're not selling anything, Peter. You're not like coaching. You're not like I don't really know. I didn't have an answer at first. I said, you know what? I want to be relevant. I feel it's important. I feel passionate about the content. I love talking about this stuff. I appreciate this conversation we're having now. Outside of doing this stuff, I don't have a lot of conversations about business and economics and policy, and it's stuff that really gets me going. So I enjoy it. I've met some people. It's been an interesting ride. But look, there's ways to monetize social media and make money on social media. I just sort of do it because I feel like it's today's business card. I no longer give business cards. I say, hey, nice to meet you. If you want to get to know me, check out my content on TikTok or Instagram, and you'll get a sense for what kind of guy I am. And that seems to work. And that's enough for me. That's enough.
Yeah. No, I fully agree with you. And you jumping in now, it's interesting too, because a lot of people say, you know what, maybe I missed the boat, like 40, 45. Maybe I missed it. I don't know anything about TikTok or social media. You spend a couple of days and you start to read through it. You realize like how impactful and powerful it really is, and how simple. Like, if a 12-year-old kid can do it, everyone can do it.
It's amazing.
Thank you so much, Peter.
I get DMs from people, I'm sure you do too, all over the world. They want to ask me or talk about business or real estate, it's amazing. I never knew that all these people were out there.
When they message you, is it, hey, I'm trying to buy my first deal? Or what type of, is there like any type of message you get? I get everything, man. I get people pitching me. But then I say, your pitch isn't that great. And they say, oh, I'm not trying to pitch you, but they're trying to pitch. I get people saying, hey, I've got an off-market opportunity in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. Do you want to look at it? And I have to say, I'm not investing in Sheboygan. And I get people that say, hey, I saw what you put up and I agree or I disagree. I mean, people just want to chime in. It's social. So I'm all for it. I mean, that's why I do it. For the 4 people out there that do engage with me, I appreciate that. I love the comments, and it makes me feel connected. I feel so isolated otherwise. Like I come in, I do my work, go to my buildings, whatever. I meet with my team, and it feels very isolated. But when I engage and connect with the whole world out there, it's really great. Like I feel not so alone. So I appreciate that. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that as well, because when people have like their day-to-day routine and they go to their office, they see the assistant and a few other people. It's like, hey, how you doing? It's like you ask that question all the time, and it kind of feels like you're just like going through the motions.
Yeah.
So when you have social media and all these people reaching out to you, it's a new experience every single day. You never know who's going to DM you or what could happen. Like I get DMs all the time of people that I would have never thought DM me or reach out to me, like athletes and people that I'm like, huh. If it wasn't for Instagram or YouTube, they would have never known I even existed.
Yeah. Do you monetize your social media at all?
I do.
Yeah, great.
YouTube, IG. Now I'm in the, like I just moved into the credit repair space. So what we're doing now is like I believe we're stepping into an affordability crisis over the next year or two.
Yeah.
People are going to put that inflation and debt on credit cards. People are going to need access to money. And so we built out a credit repair team in Boca. And we're servicing everyone. So
nice.
We're trying to become the number 1 credit repair company in the country by next year. So we're moving aggressively. So hopefully we can help a lot of people.
Look at you. How old are you?
36.
Beautiful. Love that.
But I'm gonna come to New Jersey for the holidays. Maybe we can meet up.
Would love to see you. Would love to meet. It's the beauty of what we were just talking about with social media. One day we can actually shake hands and breathe the same air. So that's great. Look, there's a lot of stuff going on for your viewers, for people who are watching this kind of stuff. The world is changing now in ways that we've never, ever, ever seen before. If you want to make money and be successful financially, there's so many ways to do it. But a lot of people, money and entrepreneurship isn't for them. So they need to find something else, right? And but I really feel now more than ever that it's so important to have a handle on the financial machine and how it all works. John, they don't teach us this stuff in school. They don't teach us this stuff at our jobs. It's impolite to bring up money with our friends. And so we don't have an outlet to talk about money or finances or business. Like there's very few places to ask questions and to learn. And I think people need to ask a lot of questions, not be afraid to talk about money, and have real intelligent conversations with people more successful than them and say, hey, how did you do it? I'd love to get on a path. And what can you advise me? All the stuff that we're talking about here. There should be some place, and maybe the place is your YouTube channel.
No, it's funny you say that, though, because like I even had like friends and family say, like, all you care about is money. You're just so money hungry. And I'm like, I don't look at it that way. Like for me, I look at money as like a mechanism of value from one to the other. And if I'm supplying enough value to the other person, they would obviously pay me for that service or product.
Yeah. Well, if they're being honest,
supplying value. Yeah. If I'm not supplying value, then what is my purpose of living?
Yeah.
The more people I can help, the more I'll benefit.
Right. And I'm sure you have lovely friends and family, but if we're being honest, and if they're being honest, I think that they're equally as concerned about money. The difference is that you take action to achieve a certain result, and perhaps they're in a space or a lane in life or a career where it's not really financially focused, and they feel a little disconnected and lost financially. My friends and family feel that way. I think a lot of my friends and family do. And
but the media really, like, especially the last couple of years, kind of like dirtied up the word entrepreneur and business owner. And,
it's killing me.
Or people think it's actually a bad thing, but
it is.
I feel like you do the right thing to your family. You do the right thing for society by finding a way for you to, be of service.
It's become a dirty word. When I was a kid, I remember my college essay to get into colleges. I was writing on applications. They were like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I started talking about entrepreneurship. And I was like the only person on the planet And back when I was a kid, if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, it meant that you were unemployable and unreliable and undesirable. Like no one wanted you, so you had to be on your own.
Like the doctor, lawyer, loser mentality.
Doctor, lawyer, loser, right. And then you started to see, I remember in the late 80s, early 90s, you started to see like some athletes and rap stars like pivot in, like P. Diddy went into Ciroc and like, you know, there was all these moves that people were making and they were becoming entrepreneurs. And then it was like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur because there was like a role model. You know, there was never really like, when I was a kid, there was never really like an entrepreneur role or many entrepreneur role models. There were some, but then it started to get into pop culture with the athletes and the musicians, and everybody wanted to be an entrepreneur. And now it's like the dirty word again, and it's bumming me out.
Yeah, I mean, like I grew up listening to like rap, like the old school rap when I was like 12, 13, 14, 15. And like it was all about money, all about like taking control of your life and doing. And like I grew up loving that. And like I feel like it had a really big shape into like who I am. Like kind of molded me to think more about that money side of it. But yeah, I agree with you fully. I think we're going to start to see a whole new swing of this, though. I think we're going to see a lot more entrepreneurs coming out over the next year or so as businesses kind of contract and potentially lay people off. People are like, you know what? I need to do my own thing. I need to take control. We might see a lot of people going out there like trying to find new talent, find people, business partners. Like this is the time to start businesses, the time to like make things happen.
Yes, it is.
Right now.
Yes, it is. It is the time right now.
Well,
not
Peter,
as good as it
so
was yesterday, and not as good as it was the day before yesterday, but right now is pretty darn good.
Do you think rates will continue? Just last question about real estate. Do you think rates are going to continue to go up? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the 10-year is going to hit 5 and change, maybe 6% on the 10-year, which is bananas for me to think about. Because in multifamily, the banks lend on a spread over the index being the 10-year in a lot of cases. And so they want to get 200 bips over the 10-year. So if it's, call it 6%, we're talking about multifamily borrowing rates around 8%. I mean, I hope we don't see that, but I think it's going in that direction.
Yeah, values of multifamily would probably drop by 50%.
Yeah.
Because the cost to borrow money would go through the roof.
Yeah, it's coming.
Huge opportunities.
It's coming, man. There's still, in real estate, there's still a disconnect. Right now, today, September 26th or 7th, whatever today is, sellers still feel like their piece of real estate is the most amazing, valuable, desirable piece of real estate on the planet, and they're asking prices that are, from a year ago or from January of 2022. And the buyers are saying, sorry, man, we're not biting. The rates have gone up, the buying power's been decreased, and the sellers haven't capitulated yet. They will. At some point, they will. And there's going to be a lot. I mean, just look at your Florida example, 1.6 million homes that are vacant. What's going to happen? I mean, that stuff's going to hit the market. Bad time to be a seller.
A YouTube video yesterday. I'm going to release it today. Kind of talking about mortgage rates, and the average buyer that were to buy a $500,000 property before with 20% down, $100,000 at a 3% rate, like they can make $85,000 a year with low debt to income ratios to be able to buy that property.
Right.
Now with current rates, they have to make $125,000. So they'd have to increase their income like 35-40% to buy the same property.
Right, which you can't do if you're in a rent-regulated environment.
Yeah.
So smoke on that. It's going to be tough.
A huge change is coming and big opportunities. Peter, thank you so much.
John, thank you. Keep it up. You're doing good work.
You too. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, buddy.
If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a comment or review. You can follow us on TikTok and Twitter at SiegelCap, and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.